Good evening. A warm welcome to everybody who is logged into the SHRM handle, and a very happy International Women's Day to all the fantastic, great women out there. We at SHRM truly, genuinely believe in the diversity and inclusion and the agenda of making work, worker, and workplace a better place with the inclusion of our folks from in a womanhood. My name is Ashish Kaul, and I am the Associate Director for Knowledge and Advisory at SHRM India. And we're going to be talking to our guest today to celebrate, on this topic. Very glad to be welcoming Sumitra Mishra, our guest for the evening. Sumitra, is the Executive Director for Mobile Crashes, which is a leading organization ensuring that the voice of most vulnerable children is central to the policy agenda of governments, businesses, and civil society. She is a postgraduate in special education for persons with disabilities and has been working and has been active for almost 2 decades, on that work, ranging from grassroots levels where she actually will go to, work in slums, work at construction sites to provide help to these vulnerable children, rural, urban poor, and work on the most excluded and disenfranchised people with disabilities, victims of trafficking, survivors of violence, especially girls and children. So her, work is encompassing from, impacting the governments to do the policy making sure that, society and the corporates ensure that there are enough funds to do this, and also to go to the grassroots levels and work on it. But more importantly, her team, which comprises of a woman folk who go to this, do this most the noble work and this dangerous work as well, as we're going to talk about. So let's talk to her. Welcome to the show, Sumitra. Thank you so much for taking out time for this evening to talk to us.
Thank you,
So,
Ashish. It's a pleasure to be on your platform.
given your work experience of about 20 years around this one, what around mobile, when we think of mobile crashes, so help us understand a little bit more about mobile crashes, about the work that you do, about how it impacts the society and why is it so important to all of us.
Well, the good thing is that the work of mobile crashes in many ways resonates with the theme of SHRM as well, where work, workers, and workplace is so important for you. It has been equally important for mobile crashes because we provide crashes and daycare services for workers at work sites. This means that children of employees, workers are in a safe and secure environment throughout the day while their parents are working, mostly working mothers. It also means that parents feel safe and relieved while they are working, and repeated evidence over many decades have shown that while such kind of quality crashes and daycares have had good positive outcomes on children's health, nutrition, learning, and overall development. At the same time, it has also had good impact on the workforce, their motivation, their attrition levels, and their productivity levels also. So, in a way, I would say that your passion and the passion of mobile crashes and the work that we do is pretty much aligned, although we come at it through different lenses.
Thank you so much, Sumitra. Because I'm sure all of us who are listening to this, particularly I live in a Gurgaon where there's a lot of construction going around, and I'm sure each one of us who's logged in would have seen children around these construction sites, and it's a sight for all of us to think about it. But probably you are blessed to be able to do something about it, and you're involved into doing something around it. Also, when we look at the mothers around, I'm sure it's a pain for them as well. And how does a woman kind of deal with it? She works at the site, she takes care of her children and her family. So it's the most noble thing, and we really at SHRM felt very blessed and very honored to be talking to you on such an important day. Now let me move on to this next question of ours, and this has been coming from a lot of people who, when we put it on social media, saying that this question we should ask from Sumitra. So Sumitra, tell me some of the unique challenges that you would have personally felt or other women folk feel when they work in an area like yours. This is not sitting in an AC room or sitting in a corporate going for meetings working on Excel sheets and kind of creating a strategy. But this is real groundwork. What is the barrier for a woman or challenges that others or you would have personally felt?
Ashish, let me first talk about the women for whose children we run these creches and their barriers. I mean, we know that in India there has been a declining workforce participation, less than 22% women in the workforce. But interestingly, did you know that more than 90% of women in the workforce are actually in the informal sector, which means construction sites, domestic work, tea gardens, brick kilns, and those kind of very unorganized informal sector where women have to step out to work and earn their livelihoods because it's a question of their survival. Yet it is this sector that really doesn't have friendly policies or even implementation of the very fragmented laws that mandate for their social protection benefits like maternity entitlement, safe transport, childcare benefits. So for the women out there who are working in this sector, there is no choice but to survive, and therefore, come what may, they will step out and work. Coming to an organization like Mobile Crushes, and you say that it's a noble cause, I think it's beyond being a noble cause. It's the duty and the responsibility of every citizen of this country to step up and step out to do something more than what we can do for ourselves and our immediate environment. uh, Within Mobile crashes, I mean, the challenges in a way would be very similar to what you described as women sitting in a corporate office and working. The fact is that women have the double burden of working outside the home to earn incomes, and women have the burden of caring for children, for elderly, and for their family inside the home, irrespective of which level we are talking about. Yes, in the social sector, we like to believe that we thrive more on passion than on very high remuneration and perks. The challenges are difficult because when you're working in construction site, transportation is a problem, safety of our own workforce is a problem. um, so majority of our women come from local communities themselves, so breaking down a lot of barriers for them to step out and get trained and get qualified to work in the childcare ecosystem has been a big challenge for them. So bringing such women out, nurturing them, and helping them stay on their job as well as grow through their experience has been a challenge. And I think a lot of these challenges will resonate across the sectors also. So, nothing very different from a corporate world to the social sector, but yes, the mission of doing something better for the world is certainly much more overpowering in this sector.
You've actually been very modest and humble to say that, nothing different. But trust me, we can imagine, the amount of challenging and the amount of passion required to even do that kind of a work. And I'm so impressed by what you said, all of us, not only, it's just not a noble cause. I think it's a duty, a primary duty to care for our fellow country beings and for our fellow human beings, in the most,
Yes.
that are around. Now, you talked about, getting, around. And one thing that stood with me was, do you ever, because you tend to go to places where there could be multi ethnic people, there could be politically charged environments, and you doing things that are, that might, there might have been interest kind of a groups who might not like what you do. uh, has there ever been, that element or that moment when you felt afraid at work? Has there been instances where you really felt worried, for people who are working, especially when women folk, because I'm assuming creches, largely would have feminine, workers. So, can you talk about something, because this is really interesting of what you do?
Look, Ashish, personally, if you ask me, I've never been afraid of my doing my work. I mean, I thrive on it. It drives me. So personally, never afraid. The more challenging it is, the more interesting it is to solve the problem. But yes, as a leader of a large team, and mostly women team, one does have the responsibility to keep your workforce safe. And especially when we know that our women are going far out of the city to these construction project sites where transportation is a challenge. Working within labor camps, which has a high demography of migrant population, a lot of floating population, so the social fabric is weak. A lot of violence and alcoholism in these areas. It is a challenge, and a, a lot of our own training program prepares our workforce on how do they respond to such challenges, keep themselves safe, keep the children safe, and yet play a transformative role in the community so that things change for the better over there. Also remember, Mobile Crushes has predominantly worked in the construction sector. It's not an easy space to work. It's not an easy ecosystem to work. So dealing with builders and their project teams on the ground is an art of diplomacy, and I can say that we've been fairly good at it. That we've built positive relationships with hundreds of developer companies across the country, and they keep coming back to us. So there's something that we do right, which has won the trust of this industry for Mobile Crushes and for our people mostly on
Interesting.
the ground.
Yeah. Interesting. What I took back when you said that, the passion, the sheer passion around to get it done is what, I've never felt afraid. So, I think for all the, female folk listening to us out there, I think if you've got that passion, if you are really, want to do it, there's nothing on earth, nothing on earth that can, actually stop you from, achieving or wanting to do what you want to do. Of course, there would be, things on the road to get trained, have professional help from people like you. It might be actually time for Mobile Crashes to go and impart this kind of a training to any female out there, because I think we all need this in the environment. There is not alcoholism and violence not just in slums. There's a lot happening in civilized society as well. But thank you so much for those answers. One thing that really stood out for me, and was your positive talk about reclaiming what is rightfully about a woman, be it a position in corporate, or be it your standing in society, or be it your rightful place in the home. What is that one mental state that you would think is critical, that makes or breaks about a woman to rightfully claim what is hers? What is that one thing that Sumitra had it in her, and that you would want all females to have it in their mind when they're embarking on their journey to claim what is rightfully theirs?
Um, what Sumitra had it on her, or what I can say about people around me, or young people, is the right to choose. I had the privilege of making a choice to educate myself, choice to pursue a career, choice to travel, choice to say no when something was not appropriate or something didn't appeal to me. So, the power to say yes or the power to say no, the power to choose what you want to do in life is a great privilege that someone like me carries, and hundreds of people who are today in this audience carry. And that, I think, is a responsibility that all of us who have that privilege need to make sure that we create an environment, we create a world where more and more women, especially young women, adolescent girls, have that power to choose, the power to reclaim that space. Courage and passion needs to come from within you, but courage and passion also needs to be nurtured by people from within you, right from your family to your school to your community to your workplace. So I think that would be the message that I would have, that if you have had the power to make one choice about your life one day, then see how we can transfer that to another woman or another girl who probably is struggling to make that choice. You just give a bit of a lift up for that person to be able to make that choice.
That's so powerful. And all of us, who are listening to Sumitra, let me share with you, she's had a very, very, very busy day with a broken arm. Is, as you can see, she's wearing a sling. She never said no to this opportunity, because for Sumitra, what this meant was to talk to all of us out there and tell us, what does it mean to be celebrating a Women's Day in the right perspective, because this country, has a larger population which is not so privileged, and making impact over there. I think that's the story she wanted, and she was so passionate in the last 3 4 days that I've been talking to you, so passionately talking about it. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us. Now, if you had a magic wand, Sumitra, and you talked about things, we should have passion, we should say yes to things, we should not let those opportunities go. But there's also an environment which luckily some of us are able to get, and many of us in India absolutely are not so privileged to get. And while as we are improving, and there's a long way to go. Now, from a barrier perspective, if Sumitra had a magic wand and you could remove one big barrier that could you know drastically change the situation, what would be that big barrier?
For women in general in the
Yes,
workplace,
yes.
I think um, the 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 ability to be heard. When women speak up, women need to speak up, speak out, but also women will speak up when they know that they'll be heard. So I think that magic wand for me is that, listen to women's voices, whether it's at that entry level for a bright, idea or an innovation that is coming from a woman, or a woman at a leadership level, for a woman who's like you, or for a woman who's unlike you. Speak up and be heard. So the magic wand for me would be to create a space where women's voices are heard and listened and respected.
If we had 2 more ears or a heart or a mindset to listen to them more. But thank you so much, well said. uh, I was just you talked about the challenges in the sector that you work uh, are not so different, but I think there's also a role that the corporate world, of course there are governments that are doing something about it, and we can also have a debate about how much have they been able to impact. But I think as an ordinary citizen or as a corporate, what role do you think the corporates, because we largely been listened by a lot of corporate people out there, people who really are privileged to be working and earning what role does corporates, or what role do organizations have to play in making women, children, marginalized children, what role do they have beyond the the normal way of doing some amount of charity, or to talk about it? But what other roles do we have as normal citizens? What is my duty that I need to perform to make sure that we achieve this agenda?
Charity is important and charity is helpful, and corporate charity is significant, but it only takes us so far in this space of getting more and more underprivileged women out in the open, bringing them visible, making them visible, and making a difference to their children's life. um, for example, mobile crashes for now more than 5 decades has been doing this work, and we've grown over a period of time, and we've grown incrementally. But what will really flip, what will really transform the world is when the demand for childcare increases, and the demand for childcare comes from the workers demanding it, from the employees demanding quality childcare, whether it is from their employers in the corporate houses or from the government. And when corporations and the government think that this is a part of their duty towards their own productivity and bottom lines, this is
Hmm.
not a welfare aspect, this is not a charity, this is not about doing good, making the business link between good quality childcare options for their employees, both men and women, and how that is going to translate into business returns for them. And there's enough research to prove that. But I think that's the turning point. What can corporates do? More sustainable, ethical business to welcome more women into their workforce, into the pipeline, to nurture more women there. And in order to do that, one of the biggest enablers is to ensure that you have proper, good quality childcare options for your employees, amongst a lot of other things that will bring women. But this would be a key thing in there. And again, as I said, studies have repeatedly shown it. So I don't need to use your
Yeah.
platform to quote some of those research studies.
Yeah, no, no, that's very powerful. Not only does this make caring about children and females does not only make, a human sense, there's also a business angle to it. And I completely hear you when you say, and as you were speaking, I was thinking about a lot of, corporate mindset to say, if, she's having a baby or if she's going to be on a maternal leave, we tend to get a little bit negative about it. But thank you so much for bringing this to, underlining that, and, bringing it up. Now, we talked a lot about, the creating that environment. Now, what advice would Sumitra give to young female out there who are listening, to us? A lot of them who are students right now in college, a lot of them who just joined the corporate, ladder. What advice would you give them? What do they need to do differently, or what would you want them to take care of, when they're entering the work life? One, you already talked about: speak up, make yourself heard, take up the choices that come up to you. But anything else that comes to your mind?
This is cliche. There is no shortcut for young people entering the workforce. Hard work and honest work. It's as simple as that. Put your heart and soul to it and do a good job out of it. There is really no shortcut. There are enough management books and leadership books to read, but break it down into the basic principle. Just work hard and do honest work, and things will move and you will grow through the pipeline.
There's no shortcut to it. All of you, we're getting a lot of comments from people who, who are really liking what you said, about speaking up, demand, makes yourself heard. Also, I'm, telling all of you, if you have a question out there, please feel free to post it. We'll try to take, questions, time permitting. Now, here is the other one, which I'm sure you would have heard a lot of times. And I, reflect back upon the female folk in my own house. They take care of, me, my kid, the whole household, kitchen, and then, they go out and do wonders, like what you have done. How do you balance your work life? How do you really create a balance amongst all? This morning I was on my way to the office and I heard a news channel about a woman, who was doing a lot of stuff, and she's been uh, ridiculed on the social media to say that she's not taking care of her kids because she's, commercially, or she's focusing on a career. How do women balance this out, and how do you not get, how do we see you as equals? You have a right to do, your own passion stuff as well. Help us understand that.
Ashish, I think to this, how do we balance this out? I think we have to stop asking this question to women. How do women balance out their home and their work and what they do outside? I think we have to start asking this question to men. To you, Ashish, you said you've seen the women in your family who've helped you. Do you know that you are a part of that statistics from Government of India? No other studies that says that men spend only 4.7% of their daily time on any household non-paid work, and women spend 22% of their time on a daily basis. Working women spend 22% of the time on unpaid
That's
household work.
that's five
So
times more.
exactly. 5 times more. So the balance question is unfairly thrown at women. How do they balance? It has to turn around, and men have to start answering the question: how do men take up the burden of unpaid care work? How do men share, starting from there within their families, to their workplaces, to society at large? Unless we flip this question and have more men guests talking on Women's Day about work life balance, again next year we'll be having the same debate, Ashish.
Conversation. What would be your one message to men, and including me as well, for all of us out there? What one thing or two things that we should start to do differently as soon as we log off from this webcast? What do we need to do? How do we partner? What is the message for us? How do we support? How do we become a part of this journey?
Stop thinking that there are some things that women are better at doing and some things men are better at doing. It
There's
isn't like
absolutely everything you guys do better than us.
that's a very old excuse men have used, Ashish. You get doing it, practice it, you will do a good job out of it. Start getting to the kitchen, start taking care of children, start doing the shopping, start making the bed. Just get on the job and do it.
For all the men out there, you can cook, you can wash, clothes, you can do household work, and that's true. In every sense, and I think, Sumitra, there was a lot of chaos in the COVID times. We had really sad stories of domestic violence because there was so much of work at home, and men did not, unfortunately, and we have to say the facts out there. We've not been biased towards any gender, but people who we had challenges around there. Before I kind of turn to some of the fun questions that I also have in store for you, we would want to know, the Sumitra, the person as well. But before that, I just wanted to, reflect back upon, how does your family, respond, to the kind of work that you do, which, has an element of risk, which has an element of, is this really, like not being looked upon in society? Is this something commercially very viable? Is this a career that you choose? Or not being branded as, there is this lady who is, and being seen very negatively. How does your family, deal with it, or how do they support you? Because that's a message that all of us need to know. How do we need to support you guys better? We need hundreds of Sumitras out there to take care of all the underprivileged children out there in this country.
Ashish, I think, well, first, I have the privilege of doing what I do. So obviously, I have a lot of support starting from when at a very young age from my parents and immediate family to now and my grown up children. Having said that, I think one of the biggest burden on Sumitra or millions of women out there is that you have to constantly fight against the lack of expectation from girls and women. You
Hmm.
don't grow up in an environment where there is an expectation for you to get out and do something, achieve something. So even that, I mean, for me, that was important. That how did I create expectation amongst my family? And now I think, yes, I mean, my grown up children, they think I'm just a little bit crazy because I work too hard, but the passion rubs off. So yeah, I mean, we are okay in terms of the balance and the support within the family. And during the COVID time also, it has been great to be stuck together and support each other as a family in doing the work that Mobile Crushes needed to do at that point of time.
We got people commenting saying that men need to get inspired by power packed females like you, and so well said. So now, with I'm loving this. This is so insightful. I would have loved to go on and on, but for the lack of time, I'm. So here are some questions, and I would want to really think through, and tell me what do you think about this one? Some fun questions that I had for you. Now, if Sumitra was playing the role of any Hindi Bollywood movie character, what would be that,
Oh God.
and why? Also, you have to tell us why.
Oh, Maya Sarabhai from Sarabhai versus Sarabhai, the TV series. I I love her spunk. I love her spunk. I love what she plays, but also it tells us the irony of the privilege of choices and power. How the whole middle class narrative comes out through her. Yeah, I'm Maya Sarabhai in my other world.
That's one of my favorites as well. Now, here's another one that I have on my mind. You know, Historically in India, for a long time we have had this division of work. Men are for hearth, and females. So any role activity that typically is assigned to men that Sumitra would have always wanted. This is what I wanted to do in life, but culturally is not seen that a female should do this. Any role that comes to your mind?
Well, a lot of those barriers have gone down. I mean, women do almost everything that men do now. Personally, for me, I think on my bucket list would be to travel alone, to do a solo trip all by myself. I think
Wow.
that would
Yeah,
be
that definitely, now I think maybe to a good extent can be done, within our country. But yeah, we are of course a long way from there. But I'm
yeah.
sure with the passion that you have, you'll find difficult time to manage, but nevertheless, it's on a bucket list.
Yeah, I didn't
Uh,
mean work travel, I meant pleasure travel. So yes.
who is a woman role model for our woman role model, Sumitra Mishra?
Hundreds of women in the front line, hundreds of them. Every day they are inspiring and role model. It'll be unfair not to recognize them. my own colleagues in mobile crashes who are out there on those sites working. Of course, my mother and a lot of other women who've inspired me, but it's the daily dose of motivation that comes from interacting with these women and the mothers who work in construction sites, mothers who work as domestic workers, mothers of children with disability. They are the powerful women of this country, and they need to come out and be visible and recognized.
Thank you so much. Last one question, 30 seconds. We're running out of time. Since SHRM is all about HR, one advice that you would give us to HR folks about, one thing that we should do differently, start to do differently to, have an inclusive workplace for all of you.
Start from the floor shop. Young people at the entry level need nurturing. Leadership develops there. Women leadership can't be cultivated at the top level. Find leaders at the ground, at the bottom of the ladder. Find those women there and nurture them. They'll do wonders.
Thank you so much, Sumitra. Thank you so much for being here and talking to all of us. I'm now switching over to Neha, our host, who's going to be bringing in another fantastic person who will be talking to us. Over to you, Neha.
Thank you so much, Ashish. And that was such a wonderful conversation. So many insights. And Sumitra, thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us. Well, I am taking the baton from Ashish and taking forward this conversation with Women of Steel. And of course, I have another woman of substance with us here, and that is Susanna Bajaj. I'm not sure if you've heard of her. If not, let me tell you, she's a mountaineer, she's an adventurer, she's an explorer, and she's a motivator. Well, she is the daughter in the father-daughter duo, the first Indian father-daughter duo who climbed Mount Everest. Now that's quite an achievement in itself, and I'm absolutely delighted to be hosting you, Dia. I'm myself, a huge mountain lover, so I'm very excited to be talking to you on this platform. Well, Dia is also the youngest in the world to ski across the Greenland ice cap. She's climbed 6 out of the 7 summits. I don't know if you know about 7 summits. Well, these are the highest mountains in each of the continents, and still a very faraway dream for me. She's also a whitewater and sea kayaker. She's a PADI certified rescue diver. She's a women's rights advocate as well. She is currently Director of Business Development and Snow Leopard Adventures, which has been named Best Adventure Tour Operator in India on multiple occasions. She's a graduate of Cornell University, New York, and will soon be beginning her MBA at the Wharton School in Pennsylvania. Well, welcome, Dia. It's so good to have you with us on this platform. Is there anything that you can't do?
Neha, thank you so much for that introduction. Is there anything that I can't do? There are a lot of things that I can't do, but the first thing that comes to mind is dancing. I was recently made to do a wedding dance at a cousin's wedding, and then it didn't go out so well. But everything else, you got to keep practicing and trying.
My God, you are slaying it one peak at a time. 6 summits already done. There's only 1 left, and I'm guessing you're already preparing for that, right? That's coming up in June.
That's coming up in June. So actually just went to the gym right before this session and was training for that. And right after, I'm off for a game of tennis. So just trying to get in as much as cardio and strength training before the final expedition.
So wonderful, so wonderful. So you know what, the other day we were talking about Women's Day and how, on 8th of March every year, spotlight is on women. We are talking women of substance, lady bosses, what all we're supposed to do. And there was this panel that our CEO was invited to, and she and I ended up having this conversation, and she asked me this, that, do you know there's Men's Day as well? We don't celebrate Men's Day. Why is it that we always celebrate Women's Day? And every year on the 8th of March, there's just so much talk around women, celebrating them. Shouldn't we be celebrating them every day? And there I had this little dissonance, and I was like, absolutely, that's right. I'm anyway not for the so-called days, and I think they have become some sort of a capitalistic trap, lately. But to come to think of it, we are still being reported as a statistic, right? We are still not represented adequately when it comes to port diversity, when it comes to our participation in the labor force, talk about pay equity. So there are so many such things, right? So I rationalized it. I told our CEO HL, I told her, I said, well, we should celebrate women every day, of course, but I think on International Women's Day, it becomes even more important because, yes, we are still fighting. There are so many battles that we're still fighting, and perhaps today we need to have these conversations amplified even more, right? But you, on the other hand, are setting up newer statistics, right? So you're doing all things that, for a lot of us are just like a dream. So I wanted to start by asking you, when did you realize that you loved mountains and you wanted to climb mountains, and you are doing all the other adventure sports as well? So what attracted you to the mountains as against any other adventure sports?
So let me tell you, to be very honest, I love doing anything and everything out of doors. So whether it's kayaking, skiing, scuba diving, just get me outside and I will be happy, a very, very happy person. When it came to mountaineering specifically, both my younger sister Meghna and I were sent off to mountaineering courses when we were 12. And that was sort of, my first experience outdoors, outside, everything that I had sort of in this backpack and hiking for hours on end every day. And I know, the reaction for me immediately was, wow, I love doing this. I realized you make such good friends when you're out of doors. It's such a real experience because the people that you're talking to, you're completely cut away from technology, and the connections you make, the conversations you have, they're so real. I think the friends that I make while I'm out on an expedition or out on a course, I mean, they are friends for life, even though maybe I've only spent 2 to 3 weeks with them. And so I realized that the outdoors gives you so much, other than the personality development that it does, in terms of these real connections you make with other people. I just find that absolutely uncomparable. And it was something that got me hooked from a very, very young age.
No, absolutely. And so wonderful you say that. I just got reminded of my last trek, and, I was sort of talking about it to someone, and I ended up mentioning that how, travel, they say, is a self-development tool. And, to my mind, trekking or climbing mountains is even greater. And like you said, the whole personality development, the whole, connection, the whole, the kind of people that you meet, and in the absence of technology, those connections that you forge are so real and so authentic, right? And, as you talk about being attracted to mountains, there's also they say that there are the kind of people who like, the perseverance that you have to demonstrate when you are climbing. Climbing is no easy sport, right? So I want to understand, and you've already climbed the highest peak in the world, and I really wonder, what was that moment like for you when you stood atop Mount Everest? Do you recall that moment? Do you know what was that first thought in your head?
I do actually. It was a very intense moment because so dad and I were climbing together, and the reason we were climbing together as India's first father-daughter team was not to break any record, but it was to spread awareness about the fact that daughters are equally capable of doing things as sons, right? And especially, I guess, today when we're talking about Women's Day and the conversation and this fight that we have, right, as women, to prove ourselves, to constantly show that we can do something. I think a big part of it is also just awareness, right? It's about having that first conversation. It's about slowly breaking down these gender barriers that are so unconsciously erected by everyone in their heads, right? That girls can't do sports. Don't send your daughters out because they'll get tanned. And you're thinking of such silly things, and it's until you have those conversations or you realize that, hey, is this something that I'm really like thinking or really saying? It's until you point that out, it's until you raise that awareness that the process doesn't start or the change doesn't start. So anyways, dad and I, right, we're climbing as India's first father-daughter team. We know that we have this big mission behind us, not this record to break, but this fact that we have something to prove to families all over India. Hey, look, daughters can, we can do it. And about 1 hour, we both had been climbing. This is a 6-week expedition. We both had been climbing really, really well. This is on our summit day, right? Summit day tends to be 20 hours, both with the going up and coming down. And we'd been climbing strong through the night. And we were about 1 hour away from the summit. It was still pitch black outside when we were climbing. You usually tend to climb at night on these higher peaks, your final summit day. Now, we'd been climbing well, all is great, when suddenly 1 hour away from the summit, Dad turns to me and he's saying, Diya, I can't breathe. What had happened was the oxygen tube that was supplying his supplementary oxygen had frozen over. And immediately, both of us, I was panicking. And we are up that high, you can barely think straight. And there was this really difficult decision we had to make because both of us couldn't actually stop over there. Because if we stopped, what would happen is the paths were too narrow for anyone to cross us. So I had an option. I could either keep going forward or I could turn back. And I remember dad looked at me and he's like, no, without a doubt, you're going. You've been climbing strong, all is well. Go ahead, go for it. And so I'm climbing with a very, very reluctantly and a very, very heavy heart. And we're climbing and climbing and climbing. And I actually reached the summit of Everest at 4:15 a.m. in the morning. And it was still pitch black and you could barely see anything. And I'm sitting there right below the summit. And I don't think it even hit me that I had reached because I was so stressed out and nervous waiting for Dad. And then, it was just this absolutely magical moment because just as the sun started to rise at the summit of Everest, I see Dad walking towards me almost in slow motion, right? And then we both hug at the summit and we're crying and like unfurling then our national flag, knowing that we had such an exciting message to share, that we had made it together. I was so relieved that my climbing partner was there with me, and it was just this absolutely incredible moment that'll stay with me forever. And that's what it was like at the summit of Everest.
I can imagine. I've had a little insight. I almost imagined that scene from the movie Everest as you were describing this to me. And of course, all my own journeys where, the climb to the summit is always so very special. And I can imagine how difficult that must have been if you had to leave your dad behind. So kudos that you guys managed to do that together. And I'm guessing, of course, that and the way you were even expressing yourself, it goes to show the kind of bond that you share with your dad, right? And I'm sure he's always been that force behind you, and that makes me wonder, what does it really take, an empowering dad or a strong mom, for you to be out there achieving goals and really breaking those barriers and smashing stereotypes? What would you say if you had to pick one? What would that be?
I don't think I can pick one because I strongly believe that both my parents were driving forces when it came to me being able to do the things that I've been able to do. And that family support, I think, regardless of where it comes from, whether it's your mom, your dad, your sister, your brothers, there will be people around you. And I think it's so important to accept that support and to thrive in that support. So there is this concept of like women being able to do it all. There's this idea, right, this notion, a very false notion, that it is possible to have it all. It's possible to work hard and then come back and do everything in the household and raise your kids and do it all by yourself. I don't think that's possible. I think that as women, we have to realize that we can't set such unrealistic expectations of ourselves. But what we can do is rely on our support system. And each and every one of us today has a support system. We have friends or family, loved ones that we can look to for that support. So be there for the people in your life. Give them the support when they need it, and then be willing to accept that support. I think in both ways is very, very important. And I'm very, very fortunate to have that extremely support, that strong support system in both of my parents and my younger sister. So just I think, again, I would say that's what it's like for me personally, but each and every person can have those people to look to in their lives.
No, absolutely. My parents are pretty paranoid, but yes, I have my support system, and somehow we manage to convince them each time we are setting out on these expeditions. But what advice would you give to people who have these crazy dreams? Those women who harbor these crazy dreams, perhaps to not have a very supportive, family, or paranoid parents. Of course, like my parents tell me each time, why do you have to keep doing this all the time? You return all exhausted, all tanned, and people go to rejuvenate on a vacation, and you want to go to these journeys which make you, become so tired, and you're just not in your element anymore. Uh, but like I said, I still manage because I have that support system around me, my sisters and my friends. And while my parents say that because they are concerned, I still know that they're still supportive. But there are a lot of these women, and not just for these outdoor sports that we may want to do. A lot of things that we want to achieve in life, the passions that we have, and perhaps some crazy ones which our parents don't think are the right choices that we're making. What can those women do who struggle to find this support?
So, Neha, you very rightly pointed out that as women, there are a lot of things that sort of are labeled crazy for us to even think about, especially, things like mountaineering and like adventure. I definitely have heard a lot of that. And unfortunately, the women who are into this have to, this is an unfortunate reality. That's something that we have to fight for, to be like, hey, I just want to go out and spend some time in nature. It shouldn't be that crazy of a thought. It shouldn't be that unusual to actually want to go outside and spend time in the lap of mother nature, experiencing life the way it was before we constructed four walls around us. I mean, humanity essentially evolved to be this to live outside and enjoy nature. And I think there's so much it can give you in terms of rejuvenation, in terms of friendships, in terms of just making you feel happier, healthier, fitter. I think there's so much more to gain from a expedition or a trek or a hike when you go out on a holiday, as opposed to just lazing around on the beach or going to a city. Not to say that those aren't equally valid fun holidays, but there is a lot more to learn. So of course, yes, this is a struggle that we have to sort of deal with. I think there are a couple of things that you can do, especially when it comes to, say, the outdoors or anything that is labeled a dream that is far-fetched or something that is crazy. The first thing you can do is sort of educate the naysayers. So you can choose to sort of fight it out slowly. I'm not saying that you need to sort of be aggressive in your approach, but be informative. Tell them that, hey, actually, this is how it is. This is what it's like. Hey, mom and dad, you like to go out for your evening walks. This is kind of like that, but a little bit longer, and it's really fun. And try it out, and you'll see yourself. Or let me take you out somewhere. Don't you like going to the hills? And just say that it's a part of it, right? And then the second thing is, I think regardless of your gender, when you dream big and you dream crazy and you have these huge ideas, there are always going to be people around you who are going to be negative, who are going to be jealous, who are sort of going to question your decisions. I think the most important thing is to be resilient, and is to know that set your eyes on that target, and don't let go, don't lose sight of it. There have been times when you're in on an expedition and there's a storm and the temperatures go down to minus 40 degrees Celsius, and it feels like you're going to be blown off the face of the earth. And at those times, it's very easy to be discouraged. It's very easy to lose faith, right? It's to say, why am I here? Why am I doing this to myself voluntarily?
Yeah.
It's situations like that, right? You realize how important it is to stay positive, to keep thinking about your goal, to use positive visualization, to imagine yourself drinking a cup of hot chocolate back and warm at camp, or to better yet, at the summit of your mountain, unfurling your national flag. So I think, yeah, having a positive outlook and never losing sight of what you want to do. Also, being very, very certain that you have to work hard, plan and prepare for whatever it is that you are going forward towards. And then thirdly, relying on your support system. I think those three things are very, very essential when it comes to dreaming big and then, actually achieving those dreams.
Wonderful. So well said, not losing sight of your goal. And, as you were describing all of these things, I know the things that you're saying, a lot of these lessons you learn on these journeys, right? And, I have written a lot about the kind of leadership lessons that you gather when you are on these journeys, because I've personally learned so much. In your case, interestingly, you've gone to the depths of the ocean, and you've gone to the heights of the mountains, right? What I want to ask you is that, do you gain or do you gather different lessons from the mountains and the oceans?
I think in some ways, yes. Essentially, it all comes down to, right, like so in some ways, no, because regardless of where you are, you always feel the might of Mother Nature. Let me tell you, a lot of times people talk about conquering mountains, conquering Mother Nature. They say, Dia, you've conquered Everest now that I've climbed it. And without a doubt, when you're out there and you're climbing and you see this big, beautiful mountain in front of you, you realize that there's absolutely no such thing as conquering a mountain. When you're out in the ocean and you are this small, little, insignificant speck in the vastness of the ocean, again, you realize us humans, we're so small, we're so tiny compared to the force of Mother Nature. So there is that very humbling aspect to being outdoors. But beyond that, I think, yes, sometimes like the lessons that you can learn underwater versus the lessons that you learn while you're out on the mountain or while you're kayaking, they're different lessons because of the pace of how fast you're going. But essentially, at the end of the day, I think you learn to be humble, to always be prepared. And in each and every sport, you sort of need to know how to think on your feet. So, there are small mishaps that can happen, and each adventure sport will have different consequences. So you need to be sort of ready for that and prepared for that. But yeah, so I think mostly you learn the same things, but it's different because of the different paces and maybe the different technicalities.
No, absolutely. On that note, I also wanted to ask you, what is your high purpose? What is your calling?
My calling is to do whatever I can to spread the message of female empowerment all over the world. I think it's so, so important to keep having these conversations and for people world over to understand that, we aren't utilizing 50% of our population to its optimum. There's no heights that India as a country can't achieve, or this world, there's no problem that we can't solve as long as we sort of do it together. I think it's nothing to do. I don't think feminism or standing up for women means that we have to sort of look down on men. It's something that has to be done hand in hand. Men need to start also being involved in these conversations and not think that this is just something that women have to do. And we have to, of course, use the support of men, and both together, as all genders together need to sort of unite and do something good for humanity, for this planet that we live on, give back to nature and sort of empower everyone. And I think so a big part of my goal is sort of let's bring women into the conversation and let's try and be an example for gender equality.
And you are slaying it absolutely wonderfully. In fact, just in the previous conversation, Sumitra ended up mentioning that too, just the same thing, that we have to involve men, and men have to start supporting this agenda more than ever. We are talking feminism, we are talking women empowerment, equality in 21st century. What, according to you, impedes women from realizing their true potential? And considering whatever you have achieved, have you come across any sort of gender discrimination?
Okay, so when it comes to women not achieving their dreams, I think there are two things that primarily come to mind. One is that women are often very reserved in dreaming big because you're told to manage your expectations. Whereas a boy, if a boy says, I want to be the president of India, no one's going to think twice. Sometimes, like, you don't really hear girls saying that, or the prime minister of India. You don't really hear girls saying that as much as you would hear, say, a young boy. And so managing, firstly, like this idea of not dreaming big, so you need to, as families, encourage our women to dream, and our little kids to dream big. It should be that, hey, if little Dia says, I want to climb Everest, she shouldn't be laughed at. It should be like, wow, yeah, good on you. Why you should also be an astronaut and go to space. So firstly, like, not stopping yourselves from dreaming big, which I think, unfortunately, as women, we do have this tendency to do. And secondly, also, maybe saying no to opportunities and no to things before we come to the stage in our lives where we actually, I think as women, we do sometimes stop ourselves from being more excited or forthcoming in our roles, say in organizations, or the next steps in our lives, because we're thinking, oh, eventually we're going to get married and eventually we're going to have kids. So for that, we should start stepping back now. And even Sheryl Sandberg mentioned this in Lean In, but she does say that what as women we need to start doing and thinking about is embracing opportunities, going for it, and then dealing with our families and dealing with the realities of whatever it is, whether we're getting married or having kids. Don't letting the idea of that, we need to stop letting the idea of that stopping us from, like, moving forward in our careers. So keep moving forward, keep working hard, and then choose partners who are going to be partners, who are going to do 50% of the housework and help you sort of achieve your dreams and bolster you up. And we have to have these conversations with the men in our lives, and we have to tell them that it's okay to support the women. And I strongly believe that. So that's what I would say are the two things that as women we need to do. We need to dream big, choose supportive partners, choose supportive people in our life, keep them around, and keep working hard. In terms of discrimination, of course, that is again something that is an unfortunate reality of being a girl in India doing something unusual. You do face your fair share of naysayers, but I think if you are confident about what you want to do and you truly believe in your purpose, whatever they have to say sort of fades to irrelevance, because you are so certain about what you want to do.
Absolutely. And that passion and that conviction is absolutely visible. So thank you for sharing all of that with us. And now that, we are almost at the end of our time, before we close, I wanted to quickly ask you some rapid fire questions. I promise they're simple. They're not going to put you on a spot. So very quickly, as we wrap things up, what's one thing that you feel proud about Indian women?
What's one thing that I feel proud about in Indian women?
Yeah.
I think that we all are extremely hard workers, and we're not afraid of working hard. And I've seen that, regardless of what the woman is doing, it's like, they do it all.
So very quickly, in 2021, one thing that women should stop.
Sorry, one thing that women should?
One thing that women should stop in 2021. What should they stop doing?
Well, stop second guessing themselves. Dream big and know that you can do it. Don't second guess yourself.
And what should men do?
Men should start contributing to homes, households, and more of these duties that aren't sort of traditionally considered to be theirs. Understand that you have to give in 50% of that time at home, so that your wife can excel, or your daughters can excel, or your whoever it is can excel in their profession and passion.
Very quickly then, what comes to mind when I say feminism?
Strength.
Gender neutrality.
Goals.
Okay, choices, climbing or diving?
Ooh. Oh, this is the toughest question you've asked me. Just get me outside. Right now it's so hot. Probably I'm dying to go back to the mountains.
Diving?
Both.
Yeah, you're preparing for your next expedition. Has to be climbing.
Yeah.
Then equality or equity?
That's a great question too. Neha, you said these aren't gonna be hard.
Oh my God, am I putting you on the spot?
Uh,
First thing that comes to mind, don't think so hard.
Equity.
All right, wonderful. Last one, we need to celebrate International Women's Day because.
We need to celebrate International Women's Day because it's high time we start recognizing the force that we are as women and the amount that we have to contribute to the world.
So wonderfully said. Thank you so much, Dia. It was lovely chatting with you, and absolutely a dream. And I think I just got the opportunity to, talk to you. So it's been really wonderful, and I am so inspired. I am still an amateur trekker, but I hope to continue with these mountaineering journeys. Thank you so much, and for taking time out and being part of this. Very happy Women's Day to everyone who tuned in and was part of this conversation. We will keep bringing you these interesting conversations in the future as well. So do tune in from time to time. This is me, Neha, signing off. Have a lovely rest of the evening, all of you. Thank you so much.